Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of At Your Service with Haber and Martinez. As you can see, Martinez is not here yet. He's still operating on Martinez time, which is a little bit late, but we're lucky and fortunate and blessed to have our guest, Atara Eig, with us. Atara obviously is going to make our show appear much more aesthetically appealing, but more importantly than that, she's going to fill it with all sorts of great content and information. So that you all know, Atara is an immigration specialist. She spent 20 years working for the federal government, for the Department of Homeland Security under the division of AYS as counsel, actually as an assistant chief counsel. And for the last 5 years or so, that she's been a partner in an exclusive firm that does nothing but immigration type work, although they do a little other stuff as well, but primarily immigration, right? Atara's been at this a very long time. She's worked both sides of the fence, again, as a government attorney and now as a defense attorney. And she's going to help us, Ed and I, to talk a little bit about what I've called, I don't know that I actually created the term. I'd like to take credit for it, but somebody else may have. CRIMMIGRATION. It's the intersection of criminal and immigration law. As you all know, I'm strictly a criminal defense attorney, and Ed does mostly criminal defense work. And here in Miami, as well as other places in the country, there's a lot of overlap between criminal and immigration. I don't know who actually came up with the expression, a good man knows his limitations, but I do. And so I don't practice immigration law, and I don't give immigration advice. What I do is I have Atara Eig on speed dial. And that way, if I have a client with an immigration problem, I can put him in the very capable, competent, and caring hands of an expert who really knows what she's doing. With that introduction, Atara, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really nice to have you.
A pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. I see Martinez is trying to get in. Andres, please let him in when you have a moment. I want to kind of talk a little bit today, kind of informally, about how we intersect in what we do. And I guess maybe a great way to start that discussion would be with a hypothetical of an individual who gets pulled over for a traffic stop or is involved in an automobile accident, and the police roll up on scene, and they wind up having occasion to arrest that person for whatever it may very well be. They may have an outstanding warrant. They could be a fugitive. They could find drugs in the car. There could be a fatality. It could be a DUI, what have you. And one of the questions that's always asked by law enforcement, at least here in the state of Florida, at least here in 305, is where are you from? Where were you born? What is your immigration status? And we are not a sanctuary state, and we are not a sanctuary city or county. So they report to Homeland Security and to ICE. And now all of a sudden, my individual who's in custody for drug possession or DUI or whatever it may be is slapped with a detainer or a hold from immigration. So that's where we intersect.
Yes.
I go and I send my bondsman to go get my client out of jail. My bondsman posts bond, but lo and behold, the jail doesn't let him go.
No.
And I come to find out at that point in time that the reason they didn't let him go is because there's an ICE detainer, and I pick up the phone and call you right away.
That's true. You do.
So take it. Tell us what happens.
So in almost every instance at this point in 2021 going into 2022, a detainer is going to be put on anyone who's been arrested for any reason and who is not a U.S. citizen. And that is going to complicate matters for every criminal defense lawyer and for every defendant that is sitting in jail or incarcerated. The first thing to think about and to consider is the type of criminal case that you are handling and how difficult it will be to handle that case, or not difficult, if your client does post the bond to get out of criminal court, to get out of jail, like state jail, at which point they will be taken over to one of our immigration detention facilities. That makes things difficult sometimes, depending on the type of case that you have to manage before the courts that you appear in front of if you don't have your client, if your client's detained by immigration, by ICE. So there are times as soon as I get involved where I may say, don't post that bond. Don't post the bond. Let him stay right there and stay in a state facility, because that might be better for his case in terms of managing his case by you, Mike, or whoever his lawyer is. That's a something that you have to make that determination up front.
So let me just two things real quick. One, let me welcome Martinez. Ed is just logged on.
Sorry, I was late.
That's okay. We're just glad that you weren't taken away in a horse collar by animal control, but that's another story for another day.
I exercised my Fourth Amendment right. I walked out of my house.
Get a warrant.
Here's a pro tip. I was home with my daughter. I walked out. I walked her up behind me when nobody was on the porch. I said, the minute I step out that door, you lock this door and you don't open it for anybody except me or an officer with a warrant. And then I walked out to address what the hell was going on. I had no idea what was going on. And I know I'm not doing anything illegal, but it doesn't matter. We have those rights. Sorry, that was a PSA for the day.
That's quite all right. So the pro tip I was going to say from what Atara just told us is, this is why I said right up front, one of my philosophies is know your limitations. There are reasons that I go to an expert like Atara to answer these questions, because my client's family is concerned about one thing, and that's getting him out of jail. We want him out. We want to post the bond. We want him released right away. But if you don't have somebody who understands the functioning operational capacities and realities of the system, then what happens is you post that bond, you're out of pocket X. Now all of a sudden my client is sitting at Chrome, or worse, they ship him up to Palm Beach or wherever the hell else, Okeechobee, wherever they may put him. And I can't get him back to court now. I've got a major problem in terms of his being able to appear. Why? The feds don't give a shit about the state court system. They could care less.
100%.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that a little more, because one of the things I want to talk about later is the concept of withholds of adjudication. But let's go back to our hypothetical, right? Yeah. So we've got a guy now who's in custody. He's got an ICE detainer for whatever reason. Atara, you were talking about citizens versus non-citizens, but aren't there several different categories or classifications under the immigration guidelines as to how they label or treat people that are non-citizens? Or is it just black and white?
Well, if you're talking about people that are, detained in a state court criminal situation, then for the most part, there's really no, you're going to need somebody to do some very serious advocating and schmoozing. But otherwise, in general, whether they're a lawful permanent resident with a green card or not, or totally illegal here, or I'm in process, which means you have no status, which means you filed something and there's no adjudication yet on whatever it is you filed, whether you're married to a U.S. citizen, or the most common, that they filed for asylum, where asylum cases are not being heard. I have clients that we filed asylum applications 6 years ago, and they are not even being called. Like, they're not being called for interview. So the cases are just pending. So when you ask somebody like that, what is your status? Their answer, if you ever get an answer from anyone that says, oh, I'm pending or I'm in process, that always means they have no status. Bottom line, they have no status.
So then the answer to my question is basically it's black and white when it comes to immigration. You're either a citizen or you're subject to immigration laws because you're not a citizen.
That's correct? Right. If you're a lawful permit,
green card doesn't matter, work permit, student permit, visa, it's all meaningless if you are caught committing a crime here in the United States.
1,000%. I'm not saying that.
So Martinez, how'd you get here? What's your excuse, Martinez?
Listen, brother,
You're being unusually quiet today.
I was bored because I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted and I'm going to have to fight for my rights in a minute. I was born in New York City, brother. I was born right here in this country. So
Okay,
I am an American
Well,
citizen.
some would argue that New York and California are not part of the United States anymore.
Lately, I don't think they are, but it's not the America I grew up in.
Actually, now you don't even have to be a citizen to vote in New York, I heard.
I saw that.
Non-citizens now
Correct.
are now allowed to vote in state
state.
municipal elections.
I saw that.
They're doing it for local because they can only do it for local elections. They can't do it for any federal elections. But they did that there. I believe they did it in New Mexico about a year and a half ago. I think it was New Mexico. Did the same exact thing. Local citizens can vote whether they are citizens or not. Local residents, rather.
I would highly advise any one of my clients who is not a U.S. citizen. I don't care where they live. I don't care what their local laws are. Do not vote.
Would it be correct in assuming that could be there's some violation of federal law there?
You're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to vote. And if you check off a box on the application saying that you voted before, you either will not be eligible and will not get the green card or the visa that you want, or you'll have to file a waiver application, which will cost you, if you're going to do it yourself, which is never going to work, it's going to cost you whatever the application fee is, which is close to $1,000. And I mean, in our office for waivers, we're charging, thousands of dollars to do. So
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I didn't mean to cut you off, Atara.
Oh, go ahead. I'm done.
That's an interesting question because, for example, many times when we have to give our clients advice about taking a plea as to whether it's an adjudication or a withhold of adjudication, when I was a state attorney, I'm pretty sure the only states that recognized a withhold was the Florida and Hawaii. But again, with immigration issues, we have to. The only thing I ever tell my clients about immigration is this: a withhold does not matter to the federal government. They consider it an adjudication. So that's an interesting question. How would the federal government consider a local law that allows non-citizens to vote in local elections, but they are still voting for something that is affecting U.S. citizens on U.S. soil? I never even thought of it. They might actually consider that a violation for purposes of getting a citizenship. That's what you're saying, correct?
I think it's highly problematic. It's the same issues with things like, marijuana convictions, where, state of California, Oregon, I don't know, all the whatever other states are out there where it's no longer
the whole West Coast.
The whole West Coast, I guess.
The whole West Coast and New York.
Oh, New York as well. Okay, I don't know. I can't keep track. All I know is that according to the federal government, they haven't changed their regulations yet.
Right.
So, I mean, if I have a client sitting in front of me that is not yet a U.S. citizen, I am going to highly advise to have no issues with marijuana. Don't get involved in it, and do not vote. I don't care. I don't care who's pounding down on your door an hour before the polls are closing, saying, "Please come out and vote." Don't do it. Don't go and vote.
That's actually an interesting issue. I was going to talk to you a little bit about driver's licenses and immigration status, but that kind of raises another issue in terms of if you can get a driver's license in the state of Florida and you're not a U.S. citizen, can you also get and apply for and get a concealed weapons permit or a medical marijuana card? Because if you can do those things, you may wind up setting yourself up as a non-citizen for denial of citizenship, right? I mean, the parallel I'm trying to draw, I guess, is as a U.S. citizen here in the state of Florida, as a Florida resident, United States citizen, I can have both a concealed weapons permit issued by the state of Florida and a medical marijuana card issued by the state of Florida. But the federal government considers those two things a conflict, and I will be disqualified under federal law as far as firearms are concerned, even though the state of Florida says it's okay. So we have these innate natural conflicts between the federal government and state governments. Comes in the forms of drugs, it comes in the forms of drivers. So would those types of things as well present a problem for you in terms of your client base?
if somebody asked me at the outset, hey, can I go and do this? Can I go and do that? Can I get a weapons permit? Can I get a medical marijuana card? Can I do any of those things? I'm going to say it's better if you don't. But if you are hell bent on it, then we will we'll work with it. I mean, they're not criminal violations, but these are conflicts between the federal law and state law that I just, the easier the applications are, the easier they are to get approved.
Right.
So
Do you,
the
do you
less.
see, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
No,
Do
I'm
you
done.
do you see differences in different states? So like, for example, if you're representing somebody, I assume that your practice has you, sometimes traveling around the country. You probably get
Sure.
hired by people from, many other jurisdictions because
Yes.
your practice is a federal practice. So do you see a difference between places like California or Oregon or Washington where they do have all of these very liberal, contrast to the federal government policies as opposed to other more conservative places? Do you see and I want to talk more later about the structure of immigration proceedings, but do you see they are administrative proceedings, and do you see a difference in the way that they're handled by geography? Or is it uniform?
It's not black and white. We just feel it. I can't, it's federal law, federal law. So the immigration examiner in New York City on a family-based petition is going to adjudicate the petition based on the same laws as an examiner down here in South Florida. That being said, the results in New York City just turn out very well for things that you're like, I don't know that turned out so, that wasn't so great. And they tend to turn out just fine. But so it's all based on the same law, and the examiners are given the same education and training and information, but it's different, slightly different.
Are you saying it's because of the individuals and the atmosphere in these different jurisdictions, or
You're in 11th Circuit here is just a more conservative jurisdiction, and the 11th Circuit case law will apply here.
Right.
And that's not the case in New York, and 9th Circuit out in California
Gotcha.
it's a party over there.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit
It's
about
a free for all in the 9th Circuit.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about structure, because most people understand the criminal court system. I mean, it's a relatively basic system. I mean, anybody who's watched anything from, CSI to Starsky and Hutch can tell you that.
Did you just make a Starsky and Hutch reference?
You like that? And I'm talking about old school David Soul, not the new remake. Although I do like that. Do it. That's good. That's a great one.
I think it went back to 1974. Jesus.
Most people understand the process in criminal court, right? There's some investigation for one reason or another. There's an arrest. You go in front of a judge. There's bond, or you're detained. You have a discovery process. You have a trial or a resolution, and then everybody goes their separate ways. And it's all a matter of constitutional due process law. Immigration is nothing like that. You guys are not constitution based. You don't have neutral and detached magistrates. You have a very political executive branch process. The big guy is the Attorney General of the United States, who calls all the shots sua sponte. Maybe he or she answers to the president, maybe not. But basically, you guys are operating under administrative codes and not constitutions, correct?
Correct.
So overall, I mean, here, look, to be sure, there are people who do not get a fair shake in the criminal justice system. But we try and start with the presumption that everybody's presumed innocent, no matter what, and that everybody's entitled to procedural and substantive due process. meaning notice, an opportunity to be heard, and a fair, neutral, and detached tribunal, right? That doesn't apply in immigration. Those aren't the rules there.
No, not straight up. No, there are some due process rights there, but it depends on the process. I'll give you. Here's an example of a case that I did this year. My client was here. He came in on a visitor's visa. He had some criminal issues in his home country. He came into this country, and those criminal issues followed him. The feds got a hold of him, and he immediately agreed to cooperate. And he provided substantial assistance and cooperation to the Fed over a 5-year period. During that time, the U.S. government issued to him and his family what's called deferred action. They did not have green cards. Like I said, they all had come in on visitors' visas, and they gave them what's called deferred action, allowing them to be here in the United States while he was cooperating. He cooperated substantially for 5 years, and the cooperation was ongoing. At a certain point, the feds decided they didn't need him anymore, or they didn't want him anymore, or whatever it was they decided, and they cut him loose.
They had squeezed all the juice out of that orange.
That's it.
That's what happened.
That's what they thought, or that's what they decided, and they cut him loose. Though he didn't know he'd been cut loose, because he had scheduled the week on a certain week. He had things that he was doing with the Fed, and he got a call one morning from I think his probation officer, that he was on house. I think he was serving his sentence. He was serving the beginning of his sentence in a year of house arrest or home confinement. And I think he had an ankle monitor. And they contacted him, said the ankle monitor the wasn't working. It's
the old ruse, come in and calibrate.
Exactly.
And then they cuff him.
So he came in, and ICE was there and took him in and detained him. And when his business immigration lawyer called me, like criminal lawyers that don't do immigration, business immigration lawyers that wear fancy suits and do fancy things and don't get their hands dirty, called me and said, "Oh my God, my client got detained. What do we do?" And I said, "Well, let me know when he actually gets processed. It's going to take 8 hours at least before he's actually lands somewhere, so that I'll go and see him." Okay. And he said, "Oh, and I want to come with you." The business immigration lawyer,
and you just must love that.
Was hilarious. But so we went off to Chrome to see the client, who thought he had a meeting the following day with this important person and that important person. He's like, I don't understand. You got, I got meetings to, tomorrow and Thursday and whatever. And, I don't know. He's looking around like, this is ridiculous. Get me out of here. This is stupid. Right. And his business immigration lawyer is like, "Don't worry. We're on it. Don't worry. We've got calls in to A and B and C and X and Y and Z. And don't worry. And I sat there and I go, "You want to know what I think? You want to know what I have to say? Either one of you, whenever you want to stop talking, either one of you, I'll tell you what I got to say."
Sounds like you and me, Ed.
Nothing like neophytes talking. It's amazing. I had a client just this morning doing that to me.
I mean, my law partners and I, we do the fancy stuff, but You know, there's a lot of immigration lawyers that do the fancy stuff. They don't like that you want to do the stuff that's successful, that isn't a ton of hard work because you're already behind the 8 ball and things like that. But we know how to roll up our sleeves and get dirty because we've been on both sides and we know how to manage these types of cases and manage expectations. So there we are in a detention facility, one of which I have spent so many hours and so much time that it's weird because I think about it even when I'm there, how calm and relaxed and at home I feel behind bars, in the same place, out there for the last 25 plus years out at the Chrome detention facility. But there I am, calm as can be, and
it's your home away from home, Atara.
It's my home away from home.
And you get a little glass of wine. The least they can do is
you can stop and pick some strawberries on the way there or back.
Even my kids, like I say them, sometimes on Sundays, because it takes a lot of time, the whole process. Like I'm going out to Chrome to see a client. I'll be back in 3-4 hours. Okay, Mom, have a good time.
Yeah.
So I said to the client, I said, the feds cut you loose. No, but they said this, they said that. I said, yeah, but they're not. No, but there's an S visa and the S visa is coming, and S visa is specifically for individuals that provide substantial cooperation.
You mean S for snitch.
S for snitch. That's what it is. It's an S visa. No, the S visa, they promised me. I said, yeah, that's what they do. And they're, oh no, but I really got it. I really, really bonded with the investigator. I go, those investigators literally are trained to bond with people. They literally get training on how to make their people feel comfortable to tell them.
Can I ask Atara? Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
The suit, the business immigration lawyer. Did they broker a formal cooperation agreement with the government, or was this done by the accused himself or herself?
No, that was done by his criminal defense lawyers.
They brokered it, but how does that bind immigration?
He hired criminal defense counsel. Criminal defense counsel and the client negotiated a whole federal conviction deal. Where,
if I may, as a former prosecutor, what may have happened is the prosecutor had to call immigration so that he could stay here on soil, and all he was concerned about was keeping him here while he was useful. Yes. And they got him an S visa, but it wasn't permanent.
No, they didn't get him. No. They didn't even get him an S visa.
They didn't get him that.
They promised it. They never did it.
Basically, the prosecutor got immigration to just leave this guy alone. This guy thought he had something in stone with immigration, but he didn't. And I'll be honest with you, when I was a prosecutor, I had a job to do. And as far as I know, the detectives would tell me I am the only prosecutor who in their entire career has ever said what I used to say to the potential snitches. I used to start by telling them, make absolutely no mistake. You are making a deal with the devil. I would love nothing better than to have you give me every single case you can. And then at the 11th hour, right before you're about to get your gift, you violate so I can launch you for the rest of your life to prison too. I don't like you. I don't care. You are a criminal, and I'm only using you because I have to, and I have no choice. And to be honest with you, Atara, you know why I did that? For the same reason, so you wouldn't have the problem you're having now. So they didn't have any expectations. They didn't come up with some BS about, I thought, they were so nice to me. No. This is a business transaction. And the minute you are not useful to the state, to the government, they don't need you. They don't want you. And you've now become actually a liability to them. You were always a liability, but now you're a liability with no benefits. So they're going to cut you loose.
Right.
I guess this could be a second pro tip here, because it would apply apparently equally to immigration as it does to criminal. Our little adage that we've used so many times, snitches get stitches. It doesn't have to be a literal stitch. In other words, it doesn't have to be the person that you set up, takes revenge on you. It can also be a proverbial stitch in terms of the people who you think are there to help you may not actually be helping you at the end of the day.
Michael,
like Ed said, They get all the juice out. They get all the juice out of that orange, and that's the end of it. Goodbye, right?
They are not there to help you. They are there to help the government, the state, themselves, not you. They are only there to use you as much as they can. That's it. And
That's
the other
100%
tip is,
the truth at all times.
right. That's
And
why
you
the other
want
pro
to
tip is,
negotiate.
if I may, Michael, the other pro tip: hire somebody who's going to tell you the truth, that knows what's going on. Because if this guy would have had a criminal defense lawyer, and I don't know, they may have tried, because I know I've tried to do certain things, and sometimes the government just won't budge. And I have to tell my client, okay, you have to make a decision. I tried to get you what we wanted, but they're not having it. Choice is yours. What do you want to do? But you got to try.
Yeah, he was at all times represented very well by criminal defense counsel. His situation was very, very high level and complicated, extremely high level and complicated. Very big, millions and millions of dollars, white collar, international, lots of stuff. And his lawyer did a very good job of managing the case and managing his level of criminal responsibility and what his actual sentence was.
Then it's what I said. Then it's right. Sometimes it happens. The government just isn't willing to give you what you want, and the client probably, I'm sure his lawyer said, "Listen, this is the best I can get you. I tried. So what do you want to do?" And the client probably said, "Okay, fine, I'll take it," because they're desperate to get out of prison. They're desperate to see a silver lining when maybe there isn't even one there.
Right. So the thing is that here's another pro tip. This is something that we
got it all right on the pro tips.
We love pro tips.
Partners, okay, so my law partners and I are all former federal prosecutors with Homeland Security, and I was there for so long that I was there before Homeland Security even existed. So I was with the Department of Justice, and one of my law partners, maybe the second one, I don't know, I can't remember. We've been together for so long as prosecutors and now as law partners. And this is something that we heard in the halls of the immigration court building from the time we were young lawyers. And we've heard it all along, and we hear it now, and it's 100% true. Let's say 95%. And it's basically that it ain't over until the alien wins.
Good one. I like that.
When you let that sink in, what that means is a foreign national may lose their case in 2010 or in 2005. But if you're a federal prosecutor for 30 years, 10 years later, you may see that case again. Right. Because at that point, something else has happened. And now all of a sudden, they're eligible for something else. Even though they got denied, now either the law has changed, either circumstances in their home country have changed, or their personal circumstances have changed. And all of a sudden, the case gets reopened, is back on the court docket, and oh my goodness, now the guy gets a green card. And it does happen.
And it seems to me there's a lot of ways that these folks can come into the system. Another example that I would throw out there, and I'm sure you've experienced this. We get clients who get arrested for X, Y, or Z, and ICE is never called for whatever reasons. They're not U.S. citizens, but nobody reaches out to Homeland. Nobody reaches out to ICE. They post bond. They're out. So let's say I've got a client out for X, whatever X may be, felony, misdemeanor, doesn't matter. And my client decides that they're going to take a vacation. The case is pending, and they're going to go on a cruise, or they're going to go to the Bahamas, or they're going to go to whatever. They're going to go visit mom in Chile. And I always say to them, based on my experience, because like you, I mean, I've been doing this since long before Homeland Security existed. I always say to them, look, if you're going to go anywhere, recognize that getting out of the country is a piece of cake. But if you're planning on coming back in, you got to go through a border inspection. And that means that those fine ladies and gentlemen from ICE are going to run your passport, And the first thing they're going to see is that you have a pending criminal prosecution. Now, you may be out on bond because of state court, rules, but there's no binding on federal court for that. And my client can wind up being taken into custody right then and there, independently by immigration.
Right.
That's a worst case scenario. The best case scenario, and the one that we always prepare for, is get a court order granting permission to travel, showing that you've posted bond. At least you have something that you can tender to ICE to say, look, I understand that I have this case pending, but I'm doing everything by the book. The judge gave me permission to travel. It doesn't bind the feds, but maybe it gives you a shot with, John or Jane Q ICE agent at the port or the airport.
There's no reason to travel outside of the United States if your immigration situation is something precarious or there's some wiggle. Every foreign national should be advised, no matter what, that Disney World is a nice place to vacation. So is Colorado. New York City is always a good time. And here we are in Miami.
They can go to Epcot. They can visit France. They can visit Mexico.
Years around the world. Around the world.
Yeah, all at the same time. Within an hour, they can visit all those countries.
People get themselves into such problems. And it is correct that there are times when the Fed is not going to put a detainer on somebody. Let's say they've been arrested for something, because perhaps whatever they've been arrested for doesn't make them removable, but it could make them inadmissible, right? So removable means you're here in the United States, and the law says, based on the facts of your situation, that we can remove you, deport you. But sometimes things do not cause removability, but they would make you inadmissible, which means they're not going to detain you, but then you decide to go to the Bahamas because you
can't get back in.
And when you try to come back in, they're going to say you're inadmissible. And they either will not let you back in, or if you have family and your children and you're this and you're that and whatever it is, they might let you back in, but they will parole you and put you into proceedings. And then you're going to have this hanging over your head. I want to just make sure that the public knows that on the last case that we were talking about, where the feds cut the guy loose and he's sitting there in detention, and his fancy lawyer was like, don't worry, we're going to take care of it. Well, I did take care of it, because, as I said, it ain't over until the alien wins. And while that guy said, I can't be here, this is not for me, I'm not like the type of person that gets detained, which is what every foreign national tells me in the detention facility. I've never been detained. This is terrible. This is unhuman. This is like hell. Get me out of here. I can't survive this. They do. They all survive, however long it takes me to get them out. But yeah, I got him out. He's here lawfully, and nobody is allowed to deport him or remove him. The feds cannot touch him because of what we did. So.
Well, that's why we go there. Again, so hopefully people that are listening, if you have friends or family, or everybody has somebody they know who may have gotten in trouble. For myself, and I'm sure Michael, you're the same. We don't tell our clients anything about immigration because 2 reasons. One, you can see just how complicated it is, right?
Right.
You really need to know what you're saying, because it's much like criminal. It affects somebody's life and their liberty. So, and their families and whatnot. So I know that it's very complicated, and I know that there's no, as you said, and I'm going to borrow that from you. There's no definitive answer. There's always another way in, another way out. Even when you think you're right, it could be wrong. But then when you think you're wrong, you could be right. And that's why you need somebody to help you navigate through this, because it's very tricky. Like I said, the only thing I tell my clients is very, very minimal things, like a withhold for the feds for immigration purposes is considered a conviction. They don't care. I tell them sometimes sealing and expunging a record. It all depends. Sometimes you may have to unseal and expunge records. They'll force you to unseal and expunge them. So, you want to spend the money, Make sure you understand there may come a time where you have to pay more money just to unseal it. And that's pretty much it. I tell them the rest, go see an immigration lawyer because I don't want to screw that up. It's very complicated.
You know, I always find it interesting that some offenses, which we consider to be, and when I say we, I mean criminal defense lawyers, you know, Ed and I handle a variety of cases. We do things from homicides to drug trafficking, but we also do things from disorderly intoxication to petty theft. But it's interesting to us that if somebody comes to us with a shoplifting case, especially if they're not a U.S. citizen, our antennas have to go up because we understand that the feds and the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, considers even a misdemeanor shoplifting case to be a very serious matter. It's a removable or deportable offense, correct?
Yeah, except that we got good case law on that one, so we can manage that. We can manage petty offenses. We can manage real minor first time for a small amount of marijuana. Every little, I mean, when I get a call from a criminal defense lawyer, the first thing I say is text me the statute specifically. I always have to look at the statute. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what the story is. I don't care. Just I need to see the statute, and then I can know whether that statute is something that I can work with.
What are you looking for specifically in the statute? Obviously, I'm assuming.
No, it's all based on the immigration law and case law that evolves in the 11th Circuit or whatever case that I'm dealing with, whatever circuit that is. So I have to specifically go to the cases from that circuit, and I just start doing research to make determinations. I had a case, or I was advising a criminal defense lawyer, I don't know, maybe very in the beginning of this year on a situation of, it was, what's it called? Where you're growing a bunch of marijuana in your house?
It's a grow house cultivation.
Yeah. Grow house cultivation. So they arrested the U.S. citizen husband and the wife, who was not a U.S. citizen. They arrested the both of them for this grow house. And the lawyer started, I mean, we're not worried about the U.S. citizen. That's not my problem. But with the wife, you know, he started negotiating down, and thought he was doing this great job, you know, getting his client, you know, a much, much better deal. I only got her probation. You know, she's not going to have to serve a day. She's not going to have to, you know, and sent to me, you know, first I sent to him a whole memo. This is what is going to screw her. This is what isn't going to help her. This is what would be the very, very, very best. And if you can't do that, then you should do this, or, you know, whatever it was. And he called me and he said, "Oh my goodness, I got an amazing deal for her." I mean, he's like, "I can't even believe I even did it." And, you know, proceeded to tell me what it was. And I said, "That's not doing anything for her. That's not going to help her. In the end, she's going to be totally screwed. It doesn't matter that she's not serving any time. Right. She's going to be screwed. Go back and refuse that offer and continue to negotiate." And he was so annoyed at me. He was really, I could just tell that he was so frustrated and really resented me.
Well, he had just told his clients how much of a genius he was and a miracle worker and everything else.
And let's be honest, and not just that, he probably didn't charge him enough. He undercharged, and now you're making him actually work.
Immigration lawyers do the same thing. We always undercharge. But I sent him back in there. Because I refused to say, "Okay, good job," because I said, "No, that's a terrible job." And he went back in there. I don't know what he did, but he called me a few weeks later and he said, "I got the case dropped."
Well, there you go. So good for him. Good job for him. And maybe he learned a lesson.
Yes,
he learned a valuable lesson.
Now, does that doesn't automatically bind ICE though, does it? I mean, the fact that a case is dropped.
Yeah, but that if you have a null pros, then or a case that has not been prosecuted, you don't have a conviction. You don't have a conviction. That leaves the immigration service with what's called discretion. They can look at it and say, well, we don't like it anyway. We know you were not convicted, but we don't like it. And that's discretion. But discretion can be worked on.
Right.
Because there's no black and white there. That's just some nasty.
And if I could throw a bone out to whoever's watching this, much like the only difference really, I mean, one of the things that I have that Michael doesn't have, and it's not a comment on who's better or worse. You have that, Atara, and that is exactly how that ICE officer, that Homeland officer thinks, because you were there. You shared offices with people. You heard what made people tick. You know what made people in the office reconsider things. You know what they would complain about. Right. So what I do now is I try to be the criminal defense lawyer that everyone in the office loved working with, even if it was a ball buster, even if it was somebody that would push stuff to trial, but they were a pleasure to work with because they understood how we were thinking and what we needed from them. And I'm sure that's what happens to you. You can get a lot done simply by talking with them and understanding what they need from you, which is a different position than any other immigration lawyer might have. Or am I wrong?
I mean, in the immigration world, I don't know about the state because I never worked in the state, environment, but I think the state is a lot more schmoozy and
yes, it is very schmoozy,
fraternal,
very
off
fraternal.
record negotiating.
Yes,
kind of just like that. That's from my just sort of
and nothing unethical. We're not talking anything unethical. It's just very.
How do things get done? It doesn't work. It does not work that way in the Fed. My partners and I actually find, and there are other private bar attorneys that were also former federal prosecutors. Not a lot, but there's a few of us out there, and all of us together would, I'm sure, all agree that the prosecutors that we worked with for decades do whatever they can to make our lives as difficult as possible.
Really?
People that were our friends.
Wow. No,
they like to make things as difficult as possible.
That only happens if you're a former prosecutor and you were either a dick when you were there, or you have now become a dick. But otherwise, no, we get along. We appreciate each other. We respect each other. And to be honest, even some of the people that I think we had disagreements with, but they were good people and respectable and good prosecutors and they're good ethical lawyers, we still respect them. We may not have agreed with their decisions and the way they were and whatnot, but we still respect them and get along. You have to be a real jerk for people not to be fraternal with you from the former state attorneys.
Well, they're not. I can assure you that.
Well, they got to stop drinking the Kool-Aid because we're all just people. We're all just humans, and we're all just doing our job.
It might be different out there in the Ninth Circuit, and it might be different out in in New York, but down here in the 11th Circuit, it's.
No, I think in the Ninth Circuit they would. They're not drinking the Kool-Aid; they're drinking the shroom juice.
They're all high. They're all.
Speaking of those wacky places, can we talk about sanctuary cities a little bit? Okay. Do you have any experience with that? I mean, is there a difference in terms of your practice? I mean, for us, doesn't really affect us one way or another. But I'm just curious if you see anything worth discussing under that umbrella.
Not really. I mean, I don't really get involved until somebody has a problem. So whether they've, gotten themselves into trouble and they're in a sanctuary city and anyway, they've gotten into trouble, or they're in, here in South Florida, it doesn't really impact my practice all that much. So
I would assume that there are probably not as large of a immigration defense bar in some of those sanctuary towns as there are in non-sanctuary cities.
No, I mean, the big cities are all going to have a lot of immigration lawyers. California, New York, Florida, and Texas. These are the big four. And there are immigration courts all throughout the country. But to figure out, where there are the majority of illegal immigration and legal immigration, but immigration in general, you just
Right.
look to see how many judges there are in any different state or jurisdiction. And between New York, Florida, Texas, and California, you're going to have the bulk of immigration judges.
So I want to just I want to make sure that I can understand for our clients something that comes up a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong. To sum it up, it doesn't. We have no way of knowing which us as non-immigration lawyers have no way of really knowing what the charges, how severe or how immigration will view these charges, because even a very minor offense could be a big deal to immigration, and what we would consider morally in society as a much bigger deal of a crime may not
Mhm.
actually be that big of a deal for immigration. Is that about right?
I mean, I guess I could say yes. I mean, there's so many factors. This is why I encourage any criminal defense lawyer that I know um, to reach out to me, one of my partners, or any other, reputable immigration lawyer before you start negotiating, before you go in and take a plea for your client. Get the client to retain an immigration lawyer to do at least some research and a brief
Right.
memo for the criminal defense lawyer so that they have it in front of them when they go in to start negotiating. Because you go in to start negotiating and the state attorney starts throwing things out, or the federal prosecutor, and particularly a state attorney who's not going to know a thing. They don't know a thing. They don't even know what they're doing. These young
Well,
kids, they don't even know.
I
They
knew
don't
what I
know
was
if they're
doing,
doing
but
their
not
own
about
job, and they certainly don't know any immigration law.
absolutely not. And the truth is, Atara, we didn't care. We didn't care. It wasn't our issue. It wasn't our. I mean, I'm not saying that callously or in a
No, I
nasty
mean,
way. I'm just saying, really, we have so much that we're learning and so much that
But
we have to do that
this,
that's not our problem. That's the defense lawyer and his client's issue.
so
We
but
would.
this led to a larger problem, though, right? Because we had a whole time period where the courts had to go back and look at all of these pleas that were taken,
that's right.
where defendants were not adequately advised, and it's not even so much their lawyer necessarily as it is the judge.
It
It's
was
the
the
court's
judge.
responsibility to advise the defendant of the collateral consequences or potential collateral consequences of a plea, which is
Right.
why now every judge, at least, I mean, I don't know how it works anywhere else outside of Florida, but here they are absolutely required to tell a defendant that any plea that they take may, not will, but could subject them to deportation if they're not a U.S. citizen. It's part of the standard colloquy.
Yes. The
Right.
thing is that without a review by somebody who knows what they're doing of the statute that they have been arrested for or indicted on, in conjunction with what their immigration status is, and it's not just as simple as I'm a I'm a lawful permanent resident. It could have to do with how many years have you been a lawful permanent resident? How did you enter the country? Did you enter the country legally with a visa, or did you enter it illegally? All of these little things affect and impact the analysis that I do. So when you ask me, black white, I can't give you black and white. Every
Right.
little case is different from another because I want to see the green card, I want to see the I-94, which is their entry record. I want to see when they came into the United States, how they came into the United States. I want to know if they're married to a US citizen. I want to know if they have any US citizen children. I want to know if they have a parent who's a US citizen. I want to know all those things impact a little arrest and what that means for that particular client. And each
Is
one is different.
is is there any truth to the thing that people say that all you have to do is marry a U.S. citizen and you're in? there any truth to that?
It does solve a lot of problems across the board. People come with their issues and their problems and their, how can I do this and how can I do that? And I want to do this and I want to do that. And I say, are you married? No. Are you dating? If so, is that person a U.S. citizen? If the person isn't a U.S. citizen, I say, drop them. Find someone that is. Just like,
Go
ahead.
I'm assuming that it would be a crime to sell citizenship.
That is a crime, but love is love.
I love it. I love it.
So
love
what's
is love.
a couple of bucks? What's a couple of bucks in?
Wait a minute.
What's a couple of bucks in the face of true love, Martinez?
Love is love, unless they're not an American citizen and you're an illegal alien. In that case, you're not in love with her. Trust me, you're not. You need to fall in love with an American citizen.
I mean, you know, back in the day, I don't say this to my own children, but back in the day, parents, mothers in particular, used to say to their daughters, it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich man than it is to fall in love with a poor man.
That's why Michael and I are looking for rich men.
Find yourself a rich man. Well, this is what I tell some of my clients. You know, don't date somebody that's not a U.S. citizen. That is pointless. That doesn't help you. If you're going to fall in love with a U.S. citizen.
That is true. We could always make it work. And as humans, we really can. If you think there's a couple of reasons. I want to ask a question, Mike. I know we're running out of time, but I want to ask you.
Go ahead. Go.
So years ago, and I'll set this up so you understand where I'm going for. It's for, certain groups, nationalities, or countries that right now immigration is not deporting, period. It's on hold. For like the Cubans years ago, where the Cubans knew they were safe. They could murder somebody, and they knew they were not going to get deported. Today, I think Cubans are getting deported. That's question number one. Are Cubans now getting deported? And two, are there any nationalities or any countries where aliens come from that they're not getting deported, period, end of story?
No.
And Cuba, they are deporting people to Cuba back.
They are deporting people to Cuba, but I mean, what we have is something that's called temporary protected status. It's called TPS. Okay. And any foreign national that's from a country that has TPS will know. Oh, TPS.
That sounds like a boy band. TPS. Have you got the new album? Have you gotten the new TPS album? My daughter loves it.
Those buzzwords ring. People know them. So
yeah.
And so
it makes sense.
If they're eligible, So if they've gotten to this country, however they've gotten here, by a certain date, and TPS and the Attorney General issues a TPS order on any particular country, and you can Google it, it's public, and it'll say there's TPS for Haiti from this date to this date, that the people that were here in the United States as of a certain date can get TPS and they won't be removed. They can then apply for TPS, they can then get work authorization, and if TPS gets renewed, according to the Attorney General, they can renew their TPS application. They can renew their work authorization.
So what if they were on TPS?
It was just recently issued for Venezuela.
So, for example, let's say you're on TPS for country X.
Yeah.
And then, January 1st of 2019, they said no more TPS. If you were on TPS before they stopped it, do you get to stay, or now are you subject to being removed?
You could be subject to being removed, but I mean, there's always talk and there's always statistics with new administrations as to how many, hundreds of thousands of people did President Obama actually deport? How many hundreds of thousands of people did President Trump actually deport? And you look at the numbers, you're like, oh my God,
how many hundreds thousands of people did Joe Biden not deport?
Whatever. And you're like, oh my God, this one's deporting more, and I figured that one was deporting more, but this one. In my line of work, I don't see a lot of people getting deported, which is not to say that I haven't. I have had clients that I knew were going to be deported. And I helped them to get deported faster rather than sitting in a detention facility.
Right.
But for the most part, if you get here, if you've been on TPS, and if you stay quiet, keep keep yourself in order, you're probably not going to get deported.
Got it.
It's and right now with the Biden administration, the enforcement priorities, you know, every administration does their own enforcement priorities.
Right.
Basically, Trump's enforcement priorities were, if you are not a US citizen, you're fair game. And if you're a green card holder, all right, we'll let you stay. But other than that, you're all fair game. I'm telling all of my enforcement officers, you can freely pick these people up. You meet someone, in line at Starbucks, and she's just getting her latte and going off to work, and you talk to her, and she's a nice lady with kids at home and this and that. She's been here for 20 years, but she doesn't have a green card. Go ahead, pick her up. That was Trump. Biden, no, we're not picking any of these people up. We're going after the criminals. We're going after terrorists. We're going after the people that need to be removed and taken off our street.
Well, I need to cut us off now because we're over our time limit. I'm sorry that we didn't get to talk about more because there's so much to discuss.
There's so much.
But thank you so much, Atara. Your
Thank
expertise is just beyond question, and we're very grateful, especially for your pro tips. I think they're very helpful to everybody.
Thank you.
I wish we could have had more time to talk about stuff like the southern border and.
But if our viewers learned anything, it's just how complicated immigration really is, and you can't take advice from just any lawyer, myself and Michael included.
True.
You really need to go to an expert in immigration law.
Well, and also, as I said when we started the show, whenever I have a client that I see any kind of an immigration issue with, the first thing I do is share Atara's contact, because I need her to guide me to help them. Right. And I know that I need that, and they need that. So thank you for helping us today with our show, Atara. We really do appreciate your time. And folks, I hope that you were able to get Atara's information scrolling on the bottom of the screen. If not, then when I put the video up, I will definitely attach links for you. Thank you again, everybody. We really appreciate it. And I don't know if we're going to have a show next week. Are we going to have a show next weekend on the 20th?
Why not?
A pre-Christmas show?
Yeah, let's have
maybe we will.
But only if you wear reindeer antlers. Only if you wear reindeer.
I might. If my beard were a little longer, I'd tweet it up. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful day. Have a great week. Happy holidays. Atara, thank you again.
You're welcome.
Take care, y'all.
All the best. Bye.